Welcome to 2nd century China, Han Dynasty territory. A world ruled not just by emperors, but by protocol, aroma, and a deeply rooted suspicion of whatever you are. Because everything about you is wrong. You smell like flowers, like chemicals, like a foreign spell in a bottle. That shampoo you used, blasphemy. That deodorant, black magic. That subtle lavender note from your armpits. It's screaming witchcraft, feminine weakness, or possessed barbarian. Pick your poison. The air doesn't help. It's dense with the perfume of existence. Warm bodies, sticky rice, old smoke, fermented fish, and latrine wind. There's incense, sure, but it's like trying to perfume a battlefield, somewhere between ritual and apology. Your clothes, atrocious. You're wrapped in synthetic fibers no one's invented yet, zipped and elasticized like a time-traveling toddler. The locals wear robes, natural, layered, cinched, with cloth sashes. Hemp if you're poor, silk if you're untouchably rich. You look like someone who lost a fight with a yoga mat, and your hair? Oh, your hair. If you're a man, it should be long and tied, preferably in a tight, respectful top knot. Yours is loose, unkempt, and worst of all, individualistic. If you're a woman, you're expected to have a glossy, oiled, sculpted tower of submission balanced on your skull. Yours just hangs there, limp, apathetic, Western. People stare. Then they stop staring, which is worse, because now they're whispering. You catch a word. Guy, ghost, demon, foreigner, bad news. You try to smile, mistake. You try to speak. Fatal mistake, your Mandarin is modern, mangled and tinged with Netflix. You may as well be reciting IKEA instructions to a Confucian monk. Someone gasps. Someone else clutches a charm. A chicken runs for no reason. It knows. A man bows deeply to an elderly woman. You didn't. She looks at you as if you just cursed her ancestors. You might have, accidentally. With your eyebrows and your stomach. It's still on a 21st century clock. It demands breakfast, avocado toast maybe. What it gets is a whiff of boiled millet and congealed duck bits. A child nearby is happily gnawing a root. He's winning at life. Someone offers you water. You hesitate. Offended silence. You accept. It's too late. Your modern immune system, coddled and naive, is about to meet 2nd century bacteria in what will become an unforgettable 48 hours of regret and intestinal betrayal. Flies orbit you like they know something. They do. The road is mud, or worse. If you're in a town, you're stepping over rotting vegetables, animal droppings, and the occasional philosophical drunk. If you're in a village, the scent of human labor and livestock anxiety seeps from the soil. You look for a bathroom, that's adorable, there's a ditch, it's communal, maybe, or just a random hole. Your dignity clings to your colon, not for long, and shoes, you're still in sneakers, bright, rubber-soled, logoed absurdities. Children point, adults grimace. One man whispers something about sorcery and poor taste. You haven't even met a soldier yet, or a tax collector, or a censor. You're not ready. The sun climbs, your sunscreen useless, forgotten. Your skin peels like a fruit that regrets growing up. A bureaucrat approaches, his robe flows like law incarnate. He has a brush in his hand, but it feels like a blade. He asks a question. You have no idea what he said, but you know what he means. Who are you? Why do you stink of rebellion and jasmine? Why do your eyebrows look free-thinking? In ancient China, not knowing your place is a punishable offense. And you, my friend, are absolutely displaced. Welcome to the Middle Kingdom. Now bow, and for the love of your digestive system, stop smiling like that. Forget everything you know about being clean. Seriously, erase it. Take your hot showers, your floral soaps, your exfoliating mitts, and hurl them into the Yellow River. Here, in ancient China, hygiene is less about freshness and more about philosophy, seasonality, and surviving long enough to smell another day. Let's start with the obvious. You stink, but so does everyone else. Only they're doing it on purpose. Bathing, that's not a daily thing, that's not even a weekly thing. It's a maybe if the stars align kind of. The aristocracy might bathe once every few days, if it's spring, if they're not ill, and if the local feng shui master hasn't warned that bathing might disturb your internal harmony. If you're poor, you wash when the rain does it for you, or when your family insists because the smell is starting to affect crop yields. Water isn't just water, it's sacred, dangerous, disruptive. Too much washing? That invites disease, opens your pores to ghosts, makes your yang too strong, or your qi too flimsy. Ancient physicians warned against over-cleanliness, like modern doctors warn about vaping. Soap? Sort of. There were pastes made from ash and plant oils, sometimes a gritty mix of mung beans, rice water, or even powdered deer antler, because nothing says luxury like scrubbing your face with a dead herbivore's head. Most people, though, relied on the magical trifecta of rinsing, wiping, and hoping. Hair? That's a project. It's long, it's sacred, it's your ancestral antenna, and it's oiled with animal fat or sesame goo, then combed into submission with bone or bamboo tools.
Lice are inevitable. Accept it. Love them. Name them. You'll never be alone again. And the smell, oh, the smells, even the nobility reek with layers. Silk robes can't hide the musk of a person who hasn't bathed since last festival season. Instead, they mask it with incense, scented powders, or satchels of herbs stuffed into sleeves. You walk into a room and smell clove, cinnamon, old sweat, and ambition.
It's a sensory war zone. Underneath it all, they believe that cleanliness isn't about soap, it's about balance. Clean clothes are more important than clean skin. A washed face matters more than washed feet. Dirt is acceptable, disorder is not. You visit a public bathhouse, it's surprisingly organized. Gender separated, of course. Water is heated by wood fires, carried by buckets, and rationed like gold. You're expected to rinse yourself before entering the bath because communal water deserves respect, even if your skin doesn't. Inside, there's nudity. But it's not casual, it's ritual. A slow, reverent affair. Elders soak quietly. Children are scrubbed aggressively by tired mothers. Someone chants something, someone farts, a goose wanders in. You pretend this is normal. And the weirdest part? You feel good. Because in a world where most things itch, bite, or rot, even lukewarm water feels like redemption. But bathing has rules. You don't wash during mourning. That would insult the dead. You don't bathe when you're sick. That invites the sickness deeper. You don't clean your ears too often, your ancestors might be whispering, and you don't want to miss it. Tooth care? Tooth sticks, chewing aromatic twigs, rinsing with salt water. Some elite women chew cloves or rub their teeth with crushed pearl dust. But for most people, oral hygiene is just wishful thinking. Breath is a weapon. Smiling is risky. You begin to appreciate distance. Now, toilets. Actually, no, let's not. Just know that sanitation is relative. In cities, you'll find cesspits and trench systems. In villages, it's a hole, a bucket, a judgmental pig. You don't ask questions, yet despite everything, the grime, the sweat, the symphony of fermentation, there is elegance, a strange dignity, because they don't fear dirt, they fear disorder. They fear social filth more than physical. Gossip spreads faster than cholera. Moral decay is worse than mildew. You watch a scholar methodically wash his writing brush. He treats it like a sacred relic. His fingernails? Black. His feet? Possibly sentient. But that brush? Immaculate. Cleanliness is symbolic, selective, strategic. And you start to get it. Maybe modern cleanliness is too obsessive. Maybe we scrub away the past too easily. Maybe smelling like yourself isn't a failure, it's just honest. Still, when someone offers you a pouch of camphor to wear around your neck, you accept, gratefully. because you're starting to blend in. One stench at a time. Let's get one thing straight. Your face is a liability. Not just because it's foreign, not just because it looks like it's used to selfies, caffeine, and mild emotional honesty, but because in ancient China, your face is not your own. It belongs to society, to your ancestors, to a system of etiquette so precise it could strangle you with a ribbon and call it harmony. You smile too much. Already suspicious. Smiling, especially at strangers, signals madness, seduction, or deceit. A proper face is composed, quiet, slightly miserable ideally. Think Mona Lisa, but more ashamed. You furrow your brow, people gasp. Someone makes the sign to ward off evil. Your expressions are too expressive. You haven't mastered the art of emotional neutrality, one of the most prized social skills of the Han elite. Joy must be modest. Grief must be graceful. Surprise must never look surprised. You're leaking feelings like a broken teapot. And then there's the makeup. Yes, men wear it. Proudly. Powdered faces, drawn eyebrows, and delicate touches of rouge. It's not about vanity. It's about refinement. It shows that you're educated, cultured, and painfully aware of how society judges every millimeter of your being. Women, oh, they play a different game entirely. Pale skin is everything. It means you're not a laborer, not a peasant, not dying in a rice field. To achieve this, women smear their faces with rice powder so thick it flakes in the sun like ancient plaster. Add to that rouge from crushed safflower petals, eyebrow ink, and, if you're elite, tiny floral patterns stamped onto your cheeks for extra elegance.
You, meanwhile, have pores and sweat, and that weird red patch from stress. You look like a tragic radish, but that's not your biggest problem. Feet are, or rather, what they symbolize. Foot binding isn't widespread yet in the Han Dynasty, it comes later. But even now, the expectation for women's bodies is punishing. Softness, silence, and smallness are sacred. Big strides, vulgar, loud laughter, scandalous. Functional limbs, suspicious. A good woman walks like mist and vanishes like a whisper. You stomp like a democracy on holiday. And clothing. Oh, clothing is code. Your sleeves say more than your mouth ever could. Long flowing sleeves signal grace, education, and rank. But they're also dangerous. Move them wrong, too fast, too high, too casually, and you're making an offensive gesture. Or worse, a flirtatious one.
A flick of fabric can imply seduction, rebellion, or absolute idiocy. Your posture is wrong. Your gestures are wild. Your limbs move like they've never read a Confucian scroll. People squint at you like you're performing some abstract art piece they weren't warned about. And now you're sweating, which makes everything worse. Because in this society, sweat is primal, ugly, the mark of toil or poor control. A refined person glows. You're basically leaking social failure from every pore. Even your voice betrays you. You speak too loudly, too clearly, too directly. In ancient China, conversation is a dance, indirect, poetic, full of allusions and metaphors. You say what you mean, and that's the problem. You're supposed to hint, float ideas, wrap insults in lotus petals. Instead, you crash into dialogue like a foreign ox in a silk shop. Someone offers you a compliment, you say thank you. Mistake. You should have denied it humbly, then praised them instead. Now you look arrogant, possibly insane, definitely not Confucian. And just when you think it can't get worse, someone asks your name. You say it out loud. No. In formal settings, especially among scholars and officials, you're not supposed to just blurt your name. Names are sacred. They carry status, family weight, spiritual meaning. You were supposed to bow, offer a courtesy name, possibly a poetic pseudonym. Instead, you basically screamed, "I'm Jeff," at a royal banquet. It's amazing you haven't been slapped with a fan yet. You start to understand the system. Slowly. Through humiliation. Every interaction is a test, a quiet performance, a mask that must be perfect. or else. And it's not all cruelty, there's beauty here too. The grace of a woman turning her sleeve just so. The calm dignity of an old man stroking his beard before speaking. The poetry of restraint. The silence that says everything. You begin to mimic. You lower your eyes, you soften your jaw, you speak in half questions and polite metaphors. You fold your hands in front of you and try not to exist too loudly. And for a moment it works. Someone nods at you, progress. Then your stomach growls loudly. And it's back to square one. Your stomach rumbles loudly again. But in ancient China, hunger is not just common, it's expected. It keeps you humble, controlled, a little closer to the ancestors, and they're always watching, especially at dinner. Because in the Han Dynasty, food isn't just nourishment, it's confession, politics, prayer, and occasionally punishment. Let's start with the table. There isn't one. Most people eat squatting, or sitting cross-legged on woven mats, hunched over low trays made of bamboo or lacquered wood. If you're lucky, or dangerously wealthy, there might be a small carved stand. Otherwise, your knees and dignity are on the floor. You're served a bowl. Inside, something greyish, wet, possibly rice, possibly millet, possibly yesterday's regrets. It's called congee, a rice porridge so thin it's basically edible humidity. Sometimes it's flavored with scallions, sometimes with pickled vegetables, sometimes with nothing but existential dread. And you're grateful. Because for the poor, this is a feast. You take a bite. It's bland, comforting, and weirdly, mournful. You look around. No one's talking. That's normal. Meals are quiet, respectful, a time to reflect, to remember the dead, to chew without offense, slurping, acceptable, talking with your mouth full, barbaric, asking what something is, dangerous, because you probably don't want to know. Next course, offal, liver, intestines, kidneys, tongue, all chopped and boiled and seasoned with garlic, soy sauce, or, if you're lucky, fermented bean paste. It's chewy, savoury, and slightly tragic. You gag, silently. Someone notices you've just insulted the chef, the host, and possibly their grandmother's ghost, because here, food is ancestral. Recipes are passed down like family secrets. A dumpling isn't just a snack, it's a shrine. And spitting one out is basically desecrating a temple. You try again, this time lotus root stir-fried with wood, ear mushrooms, and mystery protein. It tastes like earth, texture, and mild confusion. And then comes the meat. If it's pork, you're lucky. If it's dog, you pretend it's not. If it's something wild, you don't ask. Some animals arrive whole, head-on, teeth visible. Watching you eat them, it's a power move. You chew, slowly, carefully, because the chopsticks are real, the bones are sharp, and there is no Heimlich maneuver yet. Choking is a legitimate way to die here. Quiet, undignified, final. No one will blame the food, they'll blame your lack of control. And the utensils, chopsticks, long, elegant, carved from bamboo or bone. You hold them wrong, obviously. Too tight, too awkward. You look like you're trying to stab your dinner into submission. Someone coughs politely. Someone else stares. You switch hands. It's worse. The rice won't stick. The meat slips. You've just flung a fermented tofu cube onto a noblewoman's robe. Silence. Then mercifully, soup. Hot, clear broth. Sometimes with noodles, sometimes with fish, floating like it died of boredom. You sip. It burns. You pretend it doesn't. Your tongue blisters. Your pride disintegrates. And just when you think it's over, someone places a bowl of sticky black jelly in front of you. It's dessert. Of course it is. Made from grass, sweetened with syrup, slippery like guilt. You swallow it with a smile, you survive, barely. But not everyone does, because in imperial courts, food is also a weapon. Poisoned plums, tainted wine. One wrong sip and your history, literally. The emperor eats behind screens. Servants test every dish. Tension is the main course, and yet eating is sacred. You pour a splash of wine onto the ground for the ancestors. You burn a bit of fish for the spirits. You touch your forehead before drinking for luck. Every action is part of an invisible dialogue with the dead. You're not just feeding your body, you're feeding ghosts. And if you listen closely, between the slurps, the clinks, the silent judgments, you hear them, whispering, laughing, approving. Maybe you set down your bowl, you bow your head, you survived the meal. You might even get another. Unless the tofu incident becomes a scandal, which honestly, it might. You open your eyes, it's still dark. Of course it is. Because if the sun catches you sleeping, you've already failed. Welcome to the life of a Han Dynasty peasant. You don't wake up in a bed, you unfold from straw, or dirt, or the wooden shelf your family calls a sleeping platform. You share this space with your siblings, maybe a goat, and definitely some fleas. One of them has your name. The air smells like yesterday's sweat and tomorrow's hunger. There's no breakfast. There's a chunk of cold millet cake wrapped in cloth. You gnaw it as you walk. Your destination, the fields, your fate, irrelevant. You don't own the land. No one, you know, does. It belongs to the empire, or to a local noble who's never worked a day in his silk-sheathed life. But you pay rent, and taxes, and more taxes, some in grain, some in labor, some in silence. And silence is heavy. You carry a wooden plough behind an ox that looks like it gave up during the last dynasty. You guide it through mud that sucks at your legs like it's trying to reclaim you. Your hands blister. Your back aches. You are 15 or 50. It's hard to tell. The sun rises. Not that you notice, you're too busy calculating how many more days until the next collection, and how many of your neighbors will fake sickness or sell their children to avoid it. You've seen it. A girl wrapped in cloth traded for a sack of barley. Her mother cried, quietly. Loud grief is suspicious, might attract officials or ghosts. You keep working. Lunch is a spoonful of pickled greens and watery rice. You eat with cracked hands and cracked lips. You don't sit. There's no time. The rain might come, or the drought, or the locusts, or the inspectors. You hoe, you plant, you sweat. If you're a woman, you do all this plus spin thread, fetch water, raise children, cook food, and endure unsolicited wisdom from your mother-in-law. You nod, you obey. You are expected to smile while folding your exhaustion into dumplings, and if you complain, you're punished. Not with prison, no one can afford that luxury, but with public shame, forced kneeling, beatings, the kind that teach your bones to behave. A neighbor was caught hoarding grain. His punishment? A week in the stocks, hands blistered, urine soaked, spat on by children pretending not to be hungry. He thanked the magistrate afterward, because he still had a tongue. You return home after dusk. There's no bath, no rest, just more chores, more silence. You eat with your family, or what's left of it. One of your brothers disappeared last winter, drafted into a war no one explains. You haven't heard from him. You assume the worst, but you don't say it out loud. Instead, you hum a lullaby your grandmother taught you. She's buried under a mulberry tree, or so you hope. There was no ceremony, no grave, just dirt and debt. Your body is failing. But you're 23. Prime age, you lie down, not in bed, in obligation. You whisper to the ceiling, may tomorrow be merciful. May the inspector ignore you. May the ox survive. May your wife stop coughing. May your children remember your name, because names disappear here, just like you will. But you don't cry. There's no energy for that. And anyway, tears are for people who believe someone's watching. You think you've taken hard exams. You think finals week, SATs, or that awkward driver's test with the instructor who smelled like onions was stressful. You have no idea. Because in ancient China, the imperial examination isn't just a test. It's a nationwide spiritual gutting, a bureaucratic Hunger Game disguised as a writing contest. And it begins before you're born. Your family, if they have any ambition, starts molding you the moment you can hold a brush. No toys, no jokes, just bamboo slips, Confucian classics, and the crushing weight of 1,000 ancestors whispering, "Do not disappoint us." By age 7, you're copying ancient texts. By 10, you're reciting them backward. By 12, you're dreaming in parallel prose. You haven't seen a ball in years, just scrolls. And the occasional mouse that eats your homework, literally. And then the exam. It's called the Keiju, a multi-tiered beast of scholarly torment. First comes the county level, then the provincial. Then, if you're extraordinarily cursed and gifted, the palace examination. Each step filters out thousands, like a giant funnel where only one person gets to become a functioning bureaucrat, and the rest just fail poetically. But you still try, because passing means status, glory, a job, food, the right to wear silk without being arrested, the right to be remembered. Failing means shame, obscurity, and going back to your village to become a very literate farmer. You arrive at the exam site, a walled compound the size of your hope. You're assigned a cell. Yes, a cell. It's a stone booth the size of a modern-day toilet stall. There's a board to sit on, a board to sleep on, and a board to write on. 3 days, no leaving, no talking, no food unless you bring it, no bathroom unless you count the bucket. Some bring boiled eggs, pickled vegetables, and a lucky charm. Others bring only desperation. You unroll your brush, your inkstone, your paper, and then the prompt. It's not a question. It's a literary landmine. Discuss the moral implications of filial piety using examples from the Book of Rites, and compose a regulated verse in pentasyllabic meter about the importance of drought management. You start writing, not with your voice, but with Confucius's. Your entire essay must echo him, quote him, channel him. Originality, suspicious, emotion, dangerous. You write with someone else's soul, praying your calligraphy isn't shaky. One misplaced stroke and you've changed the meaning of loyalty to pig. Meanwhile, someone next to you is sobbing quietly. Another has passed out. A third is chanting a mnemonic about agriculture while chewing on his own sleeve. This is normal. Examiners walk through the rows, silent, judging. They carry sticks, not to hit you, but to poke your ink to make sure it's not poisoned or vanishing ink. Because cheating exists. There are cheating vests, robes with tiny texts embroidered inside, tiny scrolls hidden in hairbuns. Some even bribe proctors, but if caught, it's over. Not just the exam, your life. Execution is a known punishment for forgery. So you keep writing. As the hours blur, your handwriting decays. Your brain frays. You hallucinate Confucius judging your grammar. You try to sleep, curled on a board, ink still wet on your sleeve. And when it's over, you hand in your soul. Then you wait. Weeks, months. The results are posted in town centers, names etched into wooden boards, surrounded by the stunned silence of the hopeful and the hopeless. If your name is there, people bow to you. You are now a jinshi, a scholar official in training. You get robes, a salary, a future. If it's not, no one says anything. They just don't make eye contact, and you try again next year and the next and the next. Some men take the exam 10 times. Some die before passing. Some lose their minds mid-sentence, muttering hexameters to birds. But they all keep trying, because the exam isn't just about knowledge, it's about faith in the system, in the texts, in the belief that somewhere, buried under ink and exhaustion, your life might matter. And for a system that rarely fed anyone, it sure consumed everyone. You think fashion is about expression, that it's fun, personal, aesthetic. That's adorable, because in ancient China, especially during the Han Dynasty, Clothing is not style, it's law, it's theology. It's a full-body walking essay on who you are, who you serve, and whether or not you're about to get publicly flogged. Let's begin with your robe. Or, more likely, the fact that you're wearing it completely wrong. You tied it left over right. Fatal error. That's how the dead are dressed. Seriously, corpses get left over right. The living, right over left. You've just declared yourself deceased. Or worse, unclean, barbaric, ghost adjacent. People stare. Someone crosses themselves in the ancient Taoist way. A child starts crying. You adjust it. Too late. Now they think you're mocking funerary rites. You try to bow to apologize, and now you've insulted them again because you bowed too low, or not low enough, or at the wrong angle, or with your hands in the wrong place, or with your hat on. Oh no, you're still wearing your hat indoors. In a sacred space, you might as well have kicked over a temple and used the Buddha as a footrest. But let's back up. What should you be wearing? Well, that depends. Are you a scholar? Then linen or hemp robes in subdued colors, long, elegant sleeves, a belt with a jade ornament if you're fancy. No jewelry unless you want to be mistaken for a courtesan. Are you a noble? Silk, always silk, layers upon layers. The stiffer and more restrictive, the better. It shows you don't need to work, darling. Are you a peasant? Hemp or cotton, earth tones, simple cuts. But don't be caught dressing above your rank. That's illegal, as in punishable by whipping illegal. Now let's talk sleeves. They are not just sleeves, they are statements. The length, width, and movement of your sleeves communicate everything from your moral character to your level of ambition. Too narrow? You're impatient. Too wide? You're wasteful. Let them flap too freely and you look like a drunken opera dancer. Fold them incorrectly and you might accidentally signal seduction, aggression, or political rebellion. And that's just the sleeves. Your shoes must match your status. No leather if you're low class. No wooden clogs in the palace. No loud walking, because if people hear your footsteps before they see your face, you're a social catastrophe. Now, the hair, it's not just styled, it's sculpted, codified. If you're male and unmarried, it's tied in a simple bun. If you're married, it's bound higher. If you're mourning, it's undone. If you're in disgrace, it might be shaved. And if you're you, a 21st century time traveler with a messy ponytail and a panic sweat, you are a public disturbance and you try to copy others. You fail because you don't move like someone raised in this dance. You scratch your face, wrong. You yawn, scandalous. You wave, blasphemous. You're beginning to understand that gestures here are choreographed, like calligraphy in motion. Every nod, every step, every flick of the wrist has a script. You don't know your lines, you sit wrong, speak wrong, breathe too freely, you cross your legs. That's a masculine pose in a feminine context. You rest your arms on the table. That's a beggar's habit. You laugh loudly. Someone drops their chopsticks. But etiquette isn't just about behavior, it's surveillance. Everyone's watching and judging because society is built on face, a spiritual reputation glued to your actions. Lose it, and no amount of apologies will redeem you. You can't just recover from disgrace. You marinate in it forever. Still there's beauty. You watch an elder bow with grace, his sleeves folding like wings. A woman turns a corner and her robes follow like water. A group of scholars sit in perfect alignment, their hats like chess pieces in divine formation. It's theatre, but it's also order, a way to survive. As if the world is brutal, at least it's predictable. You can't control the plague or the harvest or the emperor's mood, but you can tie your sash right. You try again, right over left, sleeves folded modestly, head bowed just so. Someone nods, it's progress, until you sneeze, loudly, and forget to cover your mouth, and now you're not just rude, you're unclean. Again, maravilha. Vamos agora ao capítulo 8. The Emperor's Shadow, Power, Poison and Performance. O topo da cadeia era solitário, paranoico e mortal. Sorriso podia custar a sua cabeça, literalmente. Hora de entrar na corte mais perigosa do mundo. Vamos lá. You sure? Because standing too close might get you executed. Breathing wrong might be read as treason. And smiling? That's just asking for an early, creative death. Welcome to the imperial court of Han China, where power is a pageant and everyone's performing for their lives. The emperor isn't just a ruler, he's the son of heaven, a divine filter between earth and cosmos, a cosmic mediator with enough silks, eunuchs, and ceremonial hats to make even the gods feel underdressed. You don't meet him. You approach, you kneel, and you wait to be noticed, or not. Because most people here serve the emperor like people serve a volcano, from a respectful distance, with constant offerings and the lingering fear that today might be the day it erupts. And it often does. Not with lava, but with orders. Sudden, silent, deadly, beheadings, banishments, mysterious disappearances that begin with, "I heard he sneezed near the Jade Seal," and end with, "Don't ask." You're not safe. No one is. Not the concubines, numbering in the hundreds, each trained in music, dance, submission, and subtle sabotage. Not the ministers, who spend half their time writing elegant memos and the other half writing their wills. Not even the eunuchs, castrated and sworn to serve, yet wielding terrifying influence in the inner palace, whispering advice, delivering secrets, silencing rivals, smiling too politely. The emperor is surrounded, worshipped, adored, and utterly alone. He dines behind screens, sleeps in different rooms each night, trusts no one, not even his own children, especially not them, because succession is blood sport. Your son could be your heir, or your poisoner. Your brother might kneel to you and still raise an army. You spend your life scripting ceremonies, performing rituals, wearing layers of dragon-embroidered robes, while silently wondering which of your guests put powdered arsenic in the duck stew. Power is performance. Your face must never betray doubt. Your voice must never tremble. Your decrees must fall like thunder, swift, impersonal, and final. And if you're lucky, you get 30 years on the throne, 10 of them in fear, 5 in isolation, and 3 remembered fondly by scholars centuries later. The rest is legend, or gossip, or obliterated, because emperors have the power to rewrite history, literally. If a dynasty wants to forget you, it will. Your name erased, your edicts burned, your body left out of the official tomb. So you perform. Daily, you host court assemblies, grand spectacles of bowing, tribute, and strategic flattery. You greet foreign envoys, never directly. Always from behind a veil, a curtain, a screen. You are visible but untouchable, seen but not spoken to. And when you speak, your words become law, carved in stone, repeated in villages, feared by midwives, merchants, and millet farmers alike. And sometimes you go mad. 'Cause who wouldn't? Everyone bows to you. No one contradicts you. Even your paranoia is validated, especially your paranoia. You build gardens the size of cities. You summon magicians to find you immortality pills made from mercury. You dream of dragons, and your ministers declare it an omen. But you're still mortal. One day, the fever comes, the coughing, the blood, the silence, and the court waits, quietly, respectfully, to see who survives you. Your concubines fast in mourning. Your sons sharpen their smiles. The eunuchs whisper. The ministers write carefully worded eulogies about how peaceful your death was. You are embalmed, dressed in jade, buried with treasures, servants, and possibly the concubine who cried the loudest. Above your tomb, a stone tablet declares you divine. Below it, history begins correcting itself. You think women had no power in ancient China? Technically, you're right. But only if you believe power always looks like a throne. In the Han dynasty, women weren't rulers, they weren't warriors, they weren't even legal adults, really. But they were artists of survival, masters of nuance, disguise, and the long game. Because in a world ruled by men, the smartest women became invisible. And from the shadows, they shaped everything. Let's start with what you're supposed to be. If you're a woman, you are decoration, a vessel, a carrier of suns and virtue and incense trays. Your body is property. Your voice is background noise. Your job is to be agreeable, graceful, and utterly non-threatening, which makes you the most dangerous person in the room, because no one sees you coming. At age 7, you're already learning to bow without creasing your dress. By 10, you can embroider chrysanthemums while holding your tongue through an insult. By 13, your waist is measured more often than your opinion. Marriage, not your choice. It's arranged, calculated, negotiated like livestock, except livestock gets fed better during festivals. Once married, you move in with your husband's family. You become his woman, but really, you belong to his mother. She controls your food, your chores, your status, and occasionally your fate. You bear sons, hopefully. That gives you weight. Daughters, try again. And yet, you adapt. You become subtle, strategic. You cry softly in the right moments. You praise when you're insulted. You deliver tea with trembling grace while secretly arranging alliances with the other concubines. Yes, concubines. Because if you're lucky or cursed enough to be near the imperial court, you are not a wife. You're one of hundreds of women in silk, trained in music, poetry, submission, and the art of never aging. Your worth rises and falls with the emperor's attention. You master every rule of seduction, every game of etiquette, every facial expression that implies desire without suggesting ambition. And when that fails, you turn to alchemy, not metaphorically, literally, poisons made from herbs, crushed minerals, ground insects, a well-placed dose in a cup of wine, a subtle drop in soup. The symptoms, fever, confusion, a slow, poetic death. Sometimes it's a rival, sometimes it's your husband, sometimes it's you. Because women aren't just dangerous to others, they're dangerous to themselves. Foot binding isn't here yet, but expectations already twist you. You starve to stay thin, you silence yourself to stay safe, you disappear while standing in plain sight. But not all women accept this. Some fight. Empress Lu, widow of Emperor Gaozu, ruled with an iron hairpin. She eliminated rivals, rewrote laws, and placed child emperors on the throne like chess pieces. Her nickname, the Poison Empress. She wasn't loved, she was feared, which for a woman in this era is as close to immortality as you get. And what about the women in villages, the peasants, the weavers? They carry water, birth babies, bury siblings. They sing lullabies while their husbands work themselves into the earth. They offer incense to gods that never answer. They make dumplings from scraps and laugh with mouths missing teeth. They endure. That too is a form of power, because every dynasty eventually collapses, every emperor eventually dies. Every history scroll eventually forgets the names of generals, but the women, they survive. They pass down songs, recipes, superstitions. They teach daughters to smile when afraid and to boil their herbs just right. So no, they weren't powerless, they were just underestimated. And in ancient China, that was the smartest camouflage of all. So, you have ideas, that's adorable. In ancient China, especially during and after the Han Dynasty, having thoughts is both admirable and alarming. Philosophy is a national sport, one played with bamboo scrolls, ink brushes, and the occasional execution. Welcome to the most intellectually dangerous place on earth. Let's start with Confucius. He's everywhere. Not literally, he died centuries ago, but his ideas are tattooed on the bones of the empire. Order, hierarchy, filial piety, respect. A proper life is one lived like an ancient poem, measured, respectful, and absolutely devoid of improv. If you're a scholar, you quote him like scripture. If you're an official, you live by his codes, or at least pretend to. If you're poor, you memorize him anyway because maybe, just maybe, that will get you out of your village and into a position where your hands stop bleeding. But Confucius isn't the only voice. There's Laozi, the whisperer. He says things like, "Those who know do not speak, and those who speak do not know." You nod, you pretend to understand. His philosophy, Taoism, is about flowing like water, living simply and not trying so hard. It's deeply relaxing and totally incompatible with how the government actually works. Still, it thrives in temples, in forests, in the corners of tea shops where old men sigh deeply and say nothing for hours. Then there's Han Feizi, the realist, the buzzkill, the philosopher of legalism, where human beings are not noble, not trustworthy, and definitely not to be left unsupervised. Law is everything. Punishment is sacred. Morality, optional. Under legalism, you don't obey because it's right. You obey because otherwise you die. It's brutally efficient and terrifyingly effective. Many emperors love this system. It makes ruling easier. It turns fear into policy, but it also turns philosophers into fugitives because ideas are dangerous. If you write something too radical, you could be accused of confusing the people. But if you teach something too new, you're undermining harmony. Or if you question the wrong tradition at the wrong dinner party, you disappear. And your students, they disappear too. It's not paranoia, it's precedent. The infamous burning of the books and burying of the scholars during the Qin dynasty may have happened a century earlier, but the memory lingers like smoke. Philosophers know wisdom must be wrapped in flattery, tied with metaphor, and served at the right temperature. You attend a public lecture. It's not what you expect. There's no shouting, no podium. Just a man in robes, calmly quoting lines that sound suspiciously like criticism, but could also be praise. It depends on the tone, and the audience, and the wind. A student beside you whispers, "That's actually a jab at the tax policy." You nod carefully, because the man behind you might be a spy, or worse, a censor. Censorship is subtle here. They don't ban books, they just stop printing them. Or assign you a new job harvesting grain until your manuscript mysteriously vanishes. And yet philosophy flourishes. Why? Because people are desperate to understand the chaos. Floods, wars, famines, corruption. The emperor might be divine, but the rats in your kitchen aren't impressed. People want answers. Why is the world unfair? Why do bad men thrive? What's the point of virtue if your neighbor just bribed his way into silk? And so thinkers keep thinking. They write in code, they teach in gardens, they train students to ask questions in a way that sounds like compliments, and they survive. Some even thrive, becoming advisors, authors, founders of schools that last centuries, but only if they know when to speak and when to vanish. You try it once. You say something clever at a gathering, a thoughtful critique of wealth inequality using a parable about ducks. The room goes silent. Then someone claps. You're safe, this time. You thought your parents were demanding? Welcome to ancient China, where your real boss lives in a clay urn, has been dead for 200 years and still judges your every move. Because here, the ancestors aren't gone. They're just watching. Always. You don't live for yourself, you live for them. Every bowl of rice you eat, every robe you wear, every word you speak echoes back to a lineage that never asked to be disappointed. And if you screw it up, they'll know. They always know. Let's begin with the altar. Every home has one. Doesn't matter if you live in a palace or a thatched hut held together by desperation and mud. Somewhere in your house there's a table, a shelf, or a slab of stone covered in incense, faded portraits, paper charms, and the unmistakable presence of familial guilt. You light incense every morning, you bow, you offer tea, you whisper things like, "May the harvest be kind," or "Sorry about that thing I said last week." Sometimes you offer meat, sometimes wine, sometimes fake money made of paper, which you burn. So it reaches the ancestors in the afterlife, where inflation is apparently a concern. But the ancestors want more than gifts. They want behavior. They want harmony. They want you to marry the right person, raise obedient children, honor your elders, and never bring shame to the family name. If you fail, they'll let you know. You fall sick, it's a sign. Your crops die, message received. Your child won't stop crying at night. Someone's angry, and it's probably Great Uncle Lee, who died in a gambling accident and still resents being buried next to his stingy cousin. So you consult the Wu, a spirit medium. She enters a trance, shakes, wails, writes messages in ash. She says the ancestors are displeased with your laziness, or your wife's cooking, or the location of your toilet. You apologize. You move the toilet. You burn more incense, because the dead don't forgive quickly. Funerals, elaborate, expensive, emotionally mandatory. You weep, bow, wear mourning robes, abstain from meat, shave your head, if male, and avoid celebrations for months, or even years, depending on how much you loved the deceased, or how much they expect you to. If you don't mourn correctly, it's not just rude, it's dangerous. You risk inviting misfortune, or worse, a hungry ghost. These are the undead souls of people who died badly, unmourned, unloved, unresolved. They wander the earth, knocking over bowls, causing miscarriages, whispering through cracked windows, and generally being the spiritual equivalent of bad Yelp reviews. To appease them, you burn offerings, you chant, you leave food by the road at night, because nothing says, "Please stop haunting me," like a cold dumpling and a sincere bow. And yet, there's comfort in it. You're never alone. Your ancestors are with you at every meal, every festival, every heartbreak. You carry them in your blood, in your gestures, in the way you tilt your bowl when you pour tea. They are the reason you survived the plague. They are the reason your ox didn't die last winter. They are the reason your daughter finally smiled again. So, you honor them, not out of fear, but out of something deeper. Continuity. Because in a world where emperors fall, floods rise, and grain spoils without warning, your ancestors are the only thing that stay, even when you wish they'd take a break. So, you made it. Barely. You've survived a world that didn't want you. A society that didn't bend. A timeline with zero tolerance for your soft, modern habits and almond milk expectations. And yet, here you are. Dirty, confused, emotionally scarred by fermented tofu. But here, let's review. You woke up in a straw nest, soaked with ancient humidity. You smelled wrong, moved wrong, smiled like a heretic. You were almost executed for bowing at the wrong angle. You got sick from generous water. You tried to blend in and instead flung an awful dumpling at a noble woman. You learned to whisper your opinions, to fold your sleeves like apologies, and to thank your ancestors with every mildly successful bowel movement. You were hungry, cold, ashamed. You were overwhelmed by etiquette, punished by silence, and nearly destroyed by bureaucracy. You were seen. And that, somehow, was the worst part. Because in ancient China, you don't get to be a lone hero. You are part of something. A lineage. A cycle. A machine of incense and ritual and obedience and invisible debts to people who died before paper was common. There's no space for individuality. No room for rebellion unless you're ready to bleed for it. No privacy, no therapy, no permission to cry without purpose. And yet, they lived and they laughed. They loved their children. They made music from bamboo and poetry from bureaucracy. They created philosophies that still shape empires. They grew rice with hands that never stopped hurting. They knew grief intimately and still woke up to light incense. They believed their breath carried the weight of the dead and the hope of the unborn. They built a civilization, and somehow they did it all with lice in their robes and a ghost in every corner. Meanwhile, you, modern, medicated, mildly sleep-deprived, complain, when the Wi-Fi lags during your oat milk latte order. Perspective is a brutal gift. Time travel isn't about history, it's about contrast. It shows you what was lost, what was endured, and what, despite everything, never changed. People still want to belong, still want to be heard, still carry their dead like invisible tattoos. And maybe, just maybe, they were stronger than us, not smarter, not luckier, but resilient in ways we've forgotten how to be. So yes, time travel is a death sentence. But if you listen carefully, bow respectfully, and don't die of intestinal regret, you might come back with something better than survival. You come back with awe and the smell of ancient sweat in your memory forever.